The shotguns I'll be covering in this video will primarily be pump action and auto. The reason being is because it's in reference to the car system, a system that was developed for combat. So therefore something like a folding shotgun isn't considered a combat-based firearm. So that's something that I'm not going to be covering. I will, however, also throw in some ways that you can use a lever action shotgun with the car system. However, keep in mind that'll be primarily for home defense, not a combat scenario involving, like, SWAT or police force or something like that. First and foremost, every single one of your shotguns, I believe you should put a stock on them. I just find that you can shoot them so much better that way, and you have a lot more control over its recoil. And speaking of recoil, the guns that I find better suited for recoil control are ones that are not pistol grip. Some people consider a gun like this to be pistol grip. I don't. I call this grip stock. The ones that I consider to be pistol grip are the ones that other people consider to be detached pistol grip, which kind of looks a bit more like this. And then you have your ones like this, which is what I call a straight stock. I find straight stock and grip stock to be the ones that are best used in order to control that recoil. Because as I take the shot, the recoil is going this way, and what happens is that force is directed into my hand where I'm able to better control it. Whereas something like what I just call pistol grip, I don't bother calling it detached pistol grip, as I take the shot, the recoil force is going over my hand. So I found when that energy is directed into my hand, I'm able to better control it. Let's talk about the positions for a pump action shotgun that's either straight stock or grip stock. So you have close quarter ready, close quarter, combat, and weapon up. Let's begin with the close quarter position. Again, for ranges of 0 to 5 feet. Weapon is pulled in towards the chest, like so. Here's it from this angle. You will not be able to effectively pull it all the way across the chest, so there will be a bit of a gap here. What you want to do is line your forearm up with the stock and kind of pull that in towards you. Not to the extent where the gun's going to go like this. So make sure that most of the energy is kind of just going straight this way, not so much this way. So, okay, it's the hand that should control most of this as far as it's pushing into you. But don't have this forearm out like that. Just kind of have that tucked up against the stock. This hand should be on the pump, like this. Unlike assault rifles and submachine guns, I don't need to have it on this side. Having it just down here is fine because I don't need that isometric pressure from here. And if I did try the isometric pressure, well, I'm just going to pull that down like this anyway, so it's counterproductive. The other thing is that this hand here is kind of just there for a little bit of support, and of course to obviously work the pump when I need to load another round into the chamber. But having the gun in this position works so well as far as recoil management, I don't even need to use this hand. If you don't believe me, here's some footage right now of Paul Castle firing one of these shotguns using only one hand.
No recoil.
So now that we've established you can fire this gun single-handedly whilst also controlling the recoil of it really, really well, keep that in mind because I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, that's from the close quarter position. When you want to go from close quarter just down into the close quarter ready position, the way I kind of like to do it is just angling it down a little bit like this, keeping my forearm the same way. I don't like having the stock coming up like this. I'd rather have that in line with my elbow. And I'll move back a little bit so that you can see that in greater relief. Once again, I didn't muzzle swipe my feet. Now the reason why I like having my forearm in line with the stock is because if I need to be in the close quarter ready position and go straight from here to the close quarter position, it's far more easier than if the stock was up like this and I need to do this. First of all, not only do I run the risk of having the stock jam on this part of my arm, won't always happen, it's just a possibility I like to avoid at all costs, but it takes a little bit longer for me to go from here to here and then lock this into my rib cage versus it just me from going here to here. Let's talk about the combat position now. This is what it looks like. As you may have noticed, the gun's no longer tilted. The reason being is because if it's a grip stock or a straight stock, it's a little bit awkward for me in order to get that transition. A lot of people as well have a habit of getting bends in the wrist this way if they need to move it like this. The other issue is that the elbow's poking out further in order to be able to grip it properly, but all in all, when I'm in this position, I can still fire effectively and look over the sights and take out targets that are 6 to 30 feet away. I don't really need to look down the sights in order to hit them. And if the target is further than 30 feet away, anywhere between, sorry, which really I should say 31 feet for semantics, but anyway, anywhere between 31 feet and to whatever range it is that your shotgun in question will be able to effectively reach. Then if you wanted to just lower your head and look down the sights, then you can. Same principles apply for when it comes to submachine guns and assault rifles, as far as, you know, not closing the eye and reasons that may exist as to why it would warrant you needing to close an eye and blah blah blah. So all that stuff is still the same. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the video. So this is what the apogee position should look like, whereas this is the combat position where it's the same hand grips and everything like that and the same structure of my arms, except I'm just looking over the gun now as I go to take out the targets. Some of you might be wondering, what if it's a pistol grip shotgun? Because my arm's going to be in a different position now, much like it would be if it was an assault rifle, doesn't that warrant me to have the gun angled 30 degrees? You can if you want to. It's not really necessary for a pump action shotgun. The reason being is because with the assault rifles you needed that isometric pressure, so that's one of the reasons as to why the hands were structured like this. But something with a shotgun, you don't really need the isometric pressure from here. This hand's just here to support the gun to make sure it doesn't dip downwards. And you can just do that by holding it this way and having the shotgun like that. When it comes to automatic shotguns, if you wanted to do that, well, you can, I guess, if you find that it does give you much better recoil control. But as far as pump action shotguns go, the only positions that you should really be finding yourself in are the ones that I just showed you. Now, if it is a pistol grip shotgun with a stock, which I think we've all established now I encourage people to get, this hand is gripped underneath like this, not like this. Elbows again tucked in, and the stock, though, if it's a pistol grip, should be the same as an assault rifle where it goes over the wrist. If it's a grip stock or a straight stock, then it's a different story. It should be, well, tucked closer towards the body, not over the top like this. That's pretty much the only difference. But when it comes to a automatic shotgun, well then yes, there's obviously not going to be a pump on it, so you can adapt the exact same principles as if it were an assault rifle if you feel that you shoot better that way. Keep in mind, you can still, when in the combat position, just use it the same way and look over the sights if you really wanted to. It comes down to what you as an individual feel more comfortable doing. Let's talk about single-handed techniques when it comes to pump action shotguns. Doesn't matter if it's grip stock or pistol grip. Now, you already saw the footage of Paul Castle firing a gun like this single-handedly. Here's some footage of him firing a pistol grip shotgun. It's not a pump action, but it's the same principle that applies as far as recoil is concerned.
So it says far push out to the head. Somebody call for me. Right. Working my flashlight. Something happens. I've got my reaction shot. Exactly the same thing. Working with my reaction hand free. Single-handed shooting of the shotgun.
So now that we've established that in the close quarter position only, which is the only time you should fire a shotgun with one hand, now that we've established that it doesn't matter if it's pistol grip or grip stock, in this position you can fire it really well whilst controlling the recoil. Let's talk about ways how you can use the single-handed tactics with it. Now, if I've got this hand up like so, basically the weapon itself just rests in the crook of my elbow, and this arm should be angled back to where my head's close to my head, not over here, so here. Now if I wanted to pump the action using the crook of my elbow, I can do that by gripping it like so, moving the shotgun itself this way, and then coming back to this position. This hand shouldn't move, so I don't want to do this, and really if you've ever tried this as well, it's kind of hard to do this without moving the shotgun itself. So after I've taken that first shot, I can do something like this and then come back to this position whilst keeping this hand in the same spot. Maybe I've got a flashlight in this hand and I'm moving it around. Even if I did have a light on the end of my weapon, there's still no reason why I can't have an additional light looking around in other directions. I mean, you know, it's helpful. And the thing that may compromise the effectiveness of you being able to do this will be one of three things. Can be a combination of these as well. What you're wearing, so if you're wearing a long sleeve shirt that might be a little bit slippery, it may be something that can affect the grip. your physical strength and also the type of pump action shotgun that you have. If I'm in this position as well, a couple of other things to take into consideration. Depending on what's in my hand, I still can use my supporting hand to pump the action. It depends on what's in there. If I had a karambit that has a hole for my finger, well then yeah, from here I can easily take a shot and then do this effectively. If I have a knife, something this fucking long, and I'm holding it in the downward angle like this, I take a shot, next thing I go and try to pump it. Depending on how long the blade is, well, right now it's coming dangerously close to stabbing me in the hand, so that's just something to take into consideration as far as blade length of a knife like this. If it's held in this direction, well then, yeah, from here, not really much of an issue since it's only going to be aiming forward. This can become an issue if I'm using a flashlight. So if I'm here, doing what I need to do, boom, I take the shot. Well, I can reload it effectively without dropping this, as you just saw. However, if I'm with a team and they're behind me, I'm here, boom, I take the shot, next thing I do that, well, and now I've just shone the light in their face and partially blinded them. So, something else you may want to take into consideration when doing it. So, if you do have a flashlight, I recommend using the technique where you grab it like this and rack the action like so.
From this position, one-handed, no recoil. Where's the recoil in the gun? It didn't eject it completely, but you can see from there that it's ejected to the point where I can come in and come up from that position. So I'm locked into the high position. That's the body that's gone to the right.
As I stated, I would show lever action tactics for home defense only, so I know this gun doesn't have a lever on it, so let's just pretend. Doesn't matter if it's a lever action rifle or shotgun, the same principles will apply if it's a grip stock or a straight stock. Now, if I've got the gun in the close quarter position like so, boom, I take the shot. From here it's pretty straightforward, I just rack the lever. From this position it does make sense to have the gun angled in at about 30-ish or so degrees, not down like this, otherwise if a gun's straight down then my fingers can get in the way. If I have it angled out like this, then it creates a wider area where I have a bit of room for my fingers to maneuver. So when it comes to lever actions, angling it out a little bit really does help for that. If I'm using it in the single-handed position from here and need to rack the lever, well, I think it's pretty obvious. I need to grip it the same way like this, but as I rack the lever, I don't want to bring this forearm away from the stock and then do this, because the gun will have a tendency to drop. So what I want to do is also, not only as I'm gripping it here, after I take that shot, if I need to rack the lever from here, what I want to do is pull it down like this, but also keep this forearm touching the stock so that the gun doesn't dip down at this angle. Technically the line of fire is going up, you know what I mean, dipping down at the back end. And of course, when a lever action rifle or shotgun is held in the combat position, same principles apply. Anywhere from 6 to 30 feet, I don't really have to look over the sight. The advantage that you have if you have a rifle, well then, at a distance that's more than 31 feet, you can look down the sights and line up a fine shot, and it'll typically be a lot more accurate than what you would be able to get out of a shotgun. I think it goes without saying that when it comes to the single-handed tactics, they work way better if you have a auto shotgun. At least with auto shotguns, I don't need to manually get another round into the chamber. It does all that work for me. All I need to worry about is when it runs out of bullets, and then I need to reload the gun. So, with that being said, let's move on to the part where I talk about reloads. When it comes to the type of shotgun ammunition, I personally prefer slugs. The more dangerous the better. I can understand that some people may want to use buckshot for home defense, and I know I'm going to get the guy that's going to say, what about birdshot? Get out. Something I wanted to quickly discuss and get out the way now. This is a toy, and because it's a toy, it does things differently to what a real shotgun would do. For example, if I need to load rounds underneath, I can't do it as smoothly with this toy gun, whereas I can do it quite smoothly with a real gun. The comparison to that I'll be able to give is like, real gun would be silk, this gun sandpaper. Okay, let's discuss tactical reloads. A tactical reload is performed when there's rounds or at least one round still in the gun. So in order to perform a tactical reload, I'd have to put the rounds underneath. And the way that I do that, if I'm starting off in the close quarter position, or if I'm in the combat position, is always bring the gun down to here, flip it upside down, and reload my rounds this way. I like to do it this way because I like to use gravity to assist me. When it comes to placing your rounds on you, or the gun itself, some people like to have the rounds stacked on the side of the gun like this. Other people, you know, have it around that, I like to call it the Wild Wild West belt, where you can just slip the rounds into several holes that way. Other people have, you know, other little devices where the rounds are stacked down this way and they can grab them out that way. I don't really care where it is that you keep them, just as long as you can reach them quickly and effectively. Some other guy that I met a few years back liked to keep them around his ankle, because, you know, that's fucking logical. When loading rounds underneath the gun, keeping in mind that I'll always have the gun upside down, the way I like to grip it is like this. I'll use my index finger and my pinky to apply pressure to the round. In this instance, the primer will be touching the index finger. I'll then use my middle and ring finger just for a little bit of support, and I will have my thumb on this side aiming a little bit closer towards the primer. So as I place the round into the gun from underneath from here, what I want to do is just bury the head of the round first, and I'll do it in this grip. So I'm burying the head of it, then just sliding my thumb up to here, and then using the thumb to push the rest of the round into the gun. When you get good at doing that, you can practice doing it with 2 rounds, keeping in mind that the grip is still the same. When loading rounds underneath the gun, so this would be in the tactical reload or the second portion of the combat reload, if your rounds are kept on one of those Wild Wild West belts, then there's another way you can grip them. And it may require a bit of practice, but as you go grab a handful of them and pull them out, you can hold 4 in your hand at the same time like this. Keeping in mind all of the rounds should be roughly aiming in the same direction, but what's important is that they're all held between this knuckle, so not these knuckles here. And again, the thumb is on the top aiming this way, not like angle off to the side or anything weird like that. And as you're loading them into the gun, underneath here, but the same principles before, pushing the tip of the bullet in, then using the thumb to push the rest of it in, and then so forth. This tactical reload is performed the exact same way regardless if it's a pump action shotgun, auto shotgun, or even if it's pistol grip or grip stock. The only thing that you need to take into consideration is that if it is a pistol grip, when you bring it upside down, you won't be able to hold it directly upside down. But it's still okay if it's angled off a little bit towards you, you'll still be able to reach the area where you need to load in more rounds. That's one way of performing a tactical reload with shotguns. That one's best used for when the shotgun is your only weapon, or the only weapon you have left that has ammo. And again, when the gun is tilted upside down, I want to have it aiming in the direction of the threat. I don't want to have it aiming up like this, unless of course, you know, the threat's like a magpie or something, and make no mistake, in mating season here in Australia, they will fuck your shit up. So, again, I want to have the weapon aiming like this in the direction of wherever it is that the threat is. This next tactical reload works better if you still have a sidearm on, and here's how it's performed. And again, this works with any kind of shotgun, regardless if it's pump action or auto, pistol grip or grip stock. So what you want to do first off is bring in the stock. Oh yeah, and I really should have mentioned before, you do need a stock to perform this one. Bring the stock up and place it on this shoulder, okay? Whatever arm it is that I'm using to pull the trigger of the weapon, well, then that's the side I want to have it on. Don't want to have it on this side here. I want to have it on this side so that when I bring it back into my shooting position, I don't have to cross over my body this way. When loading rounds underneath the barrel from this position, I recommend gripping the rounds like this because it's far easier and faster to load them in this way. But alas, it only allows me to load 3, but you get the general idea. I kind of just wanted to follow through there. Let's talk about combat reloads. That's where I'm completely out of ammo and I need to reload. First thing that I want to do is open up the ejection port. If you, of course, have a automatic shotgun, then it's opened a different way, but I'm not here to teach you how to use your weapon. You should already know how that's done. So, however your ejection port opens, open it up. Now, the first part of these 2 combat reloads I'm going to show you was the same. It involves putting a round in here, then closing it off and then loading the rest underneath. Now, assuming the second part involves you doing this, then you should be using this hand, in which case the primer should be aiming towards your index finger. Now, what I will suggest though is that in a combat reload, you always use this hand to put one here. Then if you have to transition it up to here, then use the opposite hand. But anyway, so assuming I'm staying on this side, the primer should be touching my index finger. As I take it out with this hand here, what I want to do is go over the barrel and load the round in that way. Then seal off the ejection port. The reason why I say to go over the top is because I've got to use this hand all the time anyway, so it based on wherever it is that I'll have my round set up, I find it to be an easier force habit for me to grab them, so that I'll always be able to grab them in this position, so that my hands are always in the right position for when I need to load the rounds underneath the barrel. So once I get a round in here by going over the barrel, flip the gun upside down and then load the other rounds the exact same way as if it were a tactical reload. And then if you have to do it this way, same thing as before. Load them the way that I showed you as if it were a tactical reload performed from this position. Here's a time-saving trick for when performing a combat reload. If you hold the round like this, now with the primer aiming towards my pinky, what you can do is you can hold it underneath the gun like so. Doesn't matter if it's a pump action or if it's a auto shotgun. Just holding it like so, and after I've finished firing all my rounds, if it's a pump action, I'll bring back the pump and slide my hand over. If it's a auto shotgun, well, just slide your hand over. And so as you hold the round like this, you then just slide it into the ejection port, then close the ejection port, and then after you do that, tilt the gun over and then, do the reloading as I just explained before. And then of course if it's up this way, same principle again. Make sure that the round is down towards the base of the fingers. I found it's very easy to drop it if it's on the palm of the hand or closer up towards the tip of the fingers. Let's talk about emergency reloads. What an emergency reload is to me is when I've still completely run out of ammo, but what I want to do is load a single round into the gun, fire it, eject the spent casing or shell, whatever it is you want to call it, and then get another round in. So in this instance, the way that I prefer doing that is if I already have a round in my hand like this, as I showed you before, same principles again, weapons completely fired out of ammo, pull back on this, then slide that one in there if it lets me. This is this isn't the best gun for demonstrations, as you may have noticed, but I'll slide that in there, close the ejection port, and then fire again, and then eject that round again if it lets me. The gun's really being a smartass at the moment. Some people can effectively hold 2 rounds under the barrel. If you're one of those people, do it. Same rules really apply here. Boom, weapons out of ammo, open the ejection port, slide around into there, close the ejection port, fire, eject that, slide the other one in, as shown before, close it, fire, then eject the round. Again, if it lets you. My gun's really being a cunt tonight. There are times during an emergency reload where you'll probably have to load the weapon when the rounds aren't already in your hand. So for me, the way that I would be doing that is by using my supporting hand in order to load more rounds in. Now, a couple of things I want to mention first. Realistically speaking, during an emergency reload, it'll be because I no longer have use of my sidearm or any other kind of gun, because I would be using that. The reason why I'm doing these really fast reloads is because the threat is imminent and I need time to keep on, quickly reloading guns. Load, fire, load, fire. So if I have time to do that, I really would have time to draw my sidearm and just use that. It's more effective. So much like when I said doing a tactical reload or a combat reload that involves holding the gun upside down once I start loading rounds underneath the gun, it's because the reason I have it like this is because I don't have use to my sidearm. And this is the only gun that I have left that has ammunition in it, which is why I also have it aiming in the direction of the threat. Well, it's the exact same principle with a emergency reload. So I'll be using my supporting hand to load the rounds in, and also I think it's pretty obvious that I don't want to take my finger very far away from the trigger, which is obviously what I'd need to do while doing it this way. But yeah, if I had to do emergency reloads this way, there are ways that they can be performed when you have rounds in this hand. I'm not going to go over that because I just would much rather have myself and other people to just use this hand when doing an emergency reload. So what we have now is over the barrel tactics and under the barrel tactics. I encourage people to learn both. Now here's the thing, when loading a round underneath the barrel, it needs to be done where the primer is touching the pinky, because as I bring it underneath like this is now where it's going to be in line to be placed in properly. If it's the other way around, well, now I need to go over the top. If you've already positioned your rounds on you in such a way where it's going to be the primer towards the pinky so that you can load them underneath this way effectively, well then going over the barrel is going to be the more effective option for you. Now here's the thing I want you to remember. When you place a round in here, if it is a pump action, what I want you to do is, as you slide your hand across here to work the pump, is to slide it up this way, then bring the hand underneath. What I don't want people doing is placing the round in, then bringing the hand underneath, then moving the slide forward. As we already established, you can still fire the gun single-handedly this way with great effect and almost no recoil. So if there is a threat coming around the corner, as the ejection port's open, I get a round in there, I then close the slide, then the threat comes around, boom, I shoot him. If I rewind a little bit and I did this a little bit slower, whereas I put the round in here, then I bring my hand underneath, this is the time where the threat would emerge around, then I've got to bring the slide forward or the pump action forward, and then pull the trigger. So it's really, in order to actually load the round to the chamber, doing it the way that I prefer is 1, 2 methods as opposed to 1, 2, 3 methods, or moves I should say, not really methods. Something else I wanted to mention about when loading rounds into the gun. Now when loading them underneath, the only way that you'll really be able to do that is by pushing the tip in first, followed by the primer. It's a bit different when it comes to the ejection port. There are 3 methods that some people like to do. Some people just like to throw it in at a straight angle, so like this. I personally don't like doing it that way. What I would rather do is angle it off and either have the tip pushed into the ejection port first, then follow through pushing the rest of the round in, or I can have it the other way around where I feed the primer in first and then follow up with that. Now you need to decide for yourself which one works better for you when doing this, but here's 2 ways of remembering how to do this. Method number 1, and by the way, every time you're loading rounds underneath with the methods that I showed you, it'll always be the primer that'll have to be fed in first. Otherwise, if I had to feed it in through the tip first, I need to move it back here and then forward. So I'd rather do just 1 motion as opposed to 2 motions. So anyway, if you're loading rounds into the ejection port, method number 1, just always feed it in with the primer first. So if it's here and I need to put around the ejection port, okay, primer first. If I'm going over the top, no problem, primer first. The other way you can remember doing this is if you're holding the round like this, where the index finger is touching the primer, then from here you can remember, okay, well let's see, index finger touching the primer, so this is the way where I need to load rounds in through the tip first. Therefore, from going over the barrel to load in this way, it'll be the tip first. But when the round's held this way here, where the primer is touching the index finger, got it, from here, it's always going to be the primer first. So those are the 2 ways you can remember how to do it. Me, I personally just like to remember, okay, ejection port, primer first. If I'm loading underneath, the tip first. Some other people do prefer the method of remembering, which way to do it based on where the primer is in their hand. So that again, primer touching the index finger, it'll always be the tip of the round that goes in first. However, regardless if you're loading the shell into the ejection port going underneath the weapon, then yeah, primer will always be going in first. That's the way that I find to be the most effective when it comes to these particular shotgun reloads. I still encourage people to go under the barrel because realistically speaking there are times where you may drop around, and if you're fiddling around trying to quickly grab it and you pick it up and it's in the position where the primer is touching the pinky, well now I can't load it through the top. It's much faster for me just to go underneath the barrel now and load it that way, as opposed to trying to fiddle around and get it the right way so that I can put it over the barrel. One little method that you can do, and it doesn't matter if you're using a realistic training gun or a real gun, but go to somewhere where you'll be able to fire off some rounds and not annoy a vast amount of people if it's a real gun. Training gun, I don't think it matters that much, but what you can do is you can have a barrel or something like that beside you with a little box with a bunch of rounds in there. And what you can do is just reach in there and then pick one up, and depending on what position it's in, that's the position that you need to load the round in. So if it's this way, go shit underneath, fire the round, pick out another one. If it's the opposite way around, go okay, over the top. Anyway, this is just a little exercise or drill that I like to go over in order to keep me focused. And if you want to be additionally focused as well, as opposed to just firing the rounds out blankly, actually have some targets and line them up. So it's like, okay, under the barrel, let's see, boom, shot target number 1. This one, under the barrel again, boom, shot number 2. This one, over the barrel, bang, dropping target number 3. And you get the general idea. This is just some basic stuff, but you can add more layers to this and mix it up as you go along, but I just want to kind of give you a blueprint at this point and you can add to it later. Or, in other words, I'm giving you a skeleton and then you can add all the rest of the organs and the skin on it later. Other than having 2 rounds in your hand, one underneath the barrel, if you wanted to, if you're not worried about the round exploding in your mouth, then you can just hold it in your mouth like this. And you can either, after you've, fired the other rounds that were in your hands, as you've slid them over into the ejection port, when they're in your mouth, you can just pull it out like so. And this way you need to go over the barrel, as opposed to if it was this way, whereas if I take it out like this now, I'd need to go under the barrel, but realistically my mouth is closer to where the top is, so going over the barrel would be much faster from here. Or if you wanted to, you could just simply spit it into the ejection port and fire it that way. Well, last thing I want to talk about is shoulder transitions. If I have the weapon up here in the combat position, I can just bring the gun across this way and shoot this way if having it on the other shoulder is going to allow me to shoot better, as opposed to if it's here and may just be slightly off-angled. But if I need to do a full shoulder transition, the way that I like to do that is bring the stock over to the other side first, and then I'll take this hand, bring it down here where it needs to be, and then I'll swap it this way. So here's that from this way now. Now the reason why I don't like going over to here and then bringing a hand up to here, then bringing this one back over to here, is because I always like to have a finger near the trigger at all times. I kind of like to think of my fingers as security guards, in the sense of that when a security guard is patrolling an area by himself, he doesn't just walk off and leave that post and then wait for the other security guard to get there. There should always be at least one security guard in that area at all times. So with that being said, I'll think of my fingers as security guards, where as I swap over here, this one meets the other one, relieves him of his duty. This one then moves over here and then grabs just underneath the barrel, either the pump action or under the barrel if it's an auto shotgun. Same shit if it's pistol grip. Over here,